Yes, sir. It is Phil Valentine Show. 1-800-618-PHIL. That's 1-800-618-7445. Kyle Simons, Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Center for Lawful Access and Abuse Deterrence, here to talk to us about heroin deaths that have tripled since 2010, trying to figure out why that is. Kyle, what's up?
How's it going? Thanks for having me, Phil.
Hey, it's my pleasure. So, why is it that heroin is going? Is it like a catching on with yuppies or something? I mean, what's the deal?
Well, there is a small connection between a link between prescription drug abuse, which we're in the midst of a nationwide epidemic that is claiming about 16,000 lives every year. So what we're facing now is that we've implemented policies that have reduced opioid abuse. So to access, we've reduced the supply of these medications. And so people who are misusing and diverting these medications like oxycodone are now turning to illicit substances because they're presumably cheaper and easier to get. So, yeah, there has been an evolution of this prescription drug abuse epidemic where people are turning to illicit drugs like heroin.
All right, so we have a lot of people, and of course, one of the more famous is Rush Limbaugh got addicted to this OxyContin stuff. And people say that it's a fairly easy thing to do. I have a friend who went through the same thing, went in for back surgery, and they prescribed this, and then after he ran out, he was going, I got to get some more of this kind of stuff. And I asked him about that. I said, well, you're trying to get high or something? He said, no, I'm just trying to feel normal. I mean, it's not like you're looking for a high, but I guess that heroin would have the same effect as far as the numbing effect of the drug, right?
Well, yeah. So, these medications can be, prescription drugs can be very, they can help a person lead a fulfilling normal life and be healthy when they're taken appropriately, but they can be deadly if they're misused. And so, like I said, the policies like safer prescribing standards and consumer awareness around the ability for someone to become addicted. It's a, substance use disorders. It's a disease. It's something that can happen to anybody, regardless of, your age, your socioeconomic background, whatever. So, we put forward policies that encourage communication with your physician to make sure you're adhering to the treatment plan so that you're not becoming addicted, because presumably when people become addicted and they're cut off because of whatever reason, they still have an addiction. They need to go through addiction treatment, but if they don't, they, can easily turn to street drugs like heroin. So it's something that's all too common and unfortunate that is a threat to public health and safety.
Well, I got to tell you, because I've never been a drug user, but I wouldn't even know where to begin to go get some heroin right now. So, I mean, how do people know where? Yeah, how do people know? How do you figure out, hey, you got some smack on you? I mean, how do you know?
That's not my world either, so I couldn't tell you. But I think, having these, there's a recent movie actually that just came out that kind of highlights how this is possible, and it's the Jennifer Aniston film Cake. And in it, she is in chronic pain. She's taking prescription drugs. And when she is unable to get access to those drugs, even with a legitimate need, she actually crosses the border into Mexico to get some medications and bring it back. And so people return to these behaviors like doctor shopping and fall into these crowds of people who can help them essentially turn into illicit drug users. And in the movie, she actually turns to marijuana, which, while not as lethal as heroin can be, it's a very slippery slope. And when people become desperate and addicted, who knows how they get access. But as we see with these numbers, it's on the rise.
I got a friend who works in an addiction center. And he told me that he had a lady, and people call in and they get help for him and take them to different facilities. He said one lady called in and said that she was hooked on cocaine, and he started asking her question, how'd you get hooked on cocaine? He said, well, my daughter was hooked on cocaine, and I told her how stupid it was to be snorting cocaine, and she says, Mom, you don't know what you're missing unless you've tried it. She said she tried it once, and she was hooked on it.
Wow.
That's sad, isn't it? And now she's at the treatment center. Daughter's already gone through rehab. Now mama's lining up to go through because these drugs are so addictive.
Well, and good for her for, taking that step and getting treatment. That's one of the things that the Center for Lawful Access and Abuse Deterrence, the organization I represent, is advancing is addiction treatment access. All too often when people become addicted for whatever reason, they don't have access to treatments. And one of the proposals out in Wisconsin right now, actually, the governor there is putting forward, there's a good and there's a bad. The good is that he's giving people access to addiction treatment for free, is what he proposes. But the bad is that he's testing people who want, who need public health benefits or food stamps. He's drug testing them. So whenever they get denied for these benefits, they do have the access. They do have the option of getting free addiction treatment, which is a great thing. And that's one of the big policies that we're pushing, is making sure people have a way to, go back into society and get their lives back if they do go down that road of addiction.
So I guess you guys at your organization, which is the Center for Lawful Access and Abuse Deterrence, I mean, you would be for instead of throwing somebody in jail, getting them treatment for some kind of drug abuse, right?
Yeah, we think, drug courts, things where people, people who are nonviolent offenders, we have to have compassion for people who, on both sides of the prescription drug abuse epidemic. So people who, who need these medications, but whether, for whatever reason, turn to misusing or diverting and abusing them, and if they become addicted, we need to make sure that, they go through a drug court system, that they're not subject to these punitive measures that really don't fix the problem, and that, if anything, advance the stigma of substance use disorders. So we do propose that people get access to addiction treatment so we can improve the safety and the health of communities and families.
Well, it seems like to me, though, you throw somebody in jail for, even 6 months. If you're a heroin addict and you can't get heroin for 6 months, you're pretty much cured at that point, aren't you?
I think with withdrawal symptoms, there are a lot of other things that go into it. I don't think it fixes the issue, the disorder. I think that people need to actually have, whether it's through a different medication, for instance, methadone is a medication that is used to treat opioid addiction. Having access to those kinds of therapies, and also if it's a mental health issue, it really just kind of prolongs the problem. So we think that actually referring someone to addiction treatment facilities is really the best way to treat this. Simply putting people behind bars not only doesn't, it's proven that recidivism doesn't, it doesn't prevent that. People will more often than not turn back to the same substance they were abusing previously, whether it's legal or not. And so, if anything, we're just adding to the cost, the taxpayers of housing them in prison for a short stay. It's not worth it.
Well, what's the website there, Kyle, if people want to check you guys out?
Yeah, please check out our comprehensive strategy to reducing prescription drug abuse. It's at cladd.org, CLAAD.org.
CLAAD.org. All right, Kyle. Kyle Simon, Director of Policy at Cladd. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And speaking of drugs, this is one of those things. I mean, this is only the reason this is a story. I'll tell you the reason.